Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about measures of spread. First I'm going to be talking about the most simplest one, the range. So given our last set of data, we were looking at salary. To find the range, you would again list it from least to greatest, and it is simply just the maximum minus the minimum. Now, anytime you're talking about range and you're talking in context, you don't want to say it ranges between 185,000 to 299,000. You want to give a specific number. So after you subtract the maximum minus the minimum, you'll say the range of salaries is $156,000. So basically, it is just the max minus the min. All right. Next, I'm going to talk about standard deviation. Now, how do we find the standard deviation? This is actually a much longer process, and it's going to be broken down into parts, and then later on I will show you the formula. So don't be overwhelmed by the formula. Basically, to find the standard deviation, the first thing you want to know is your average, because when you're calculating standard deviation, you want to know how much each observation or each salary, how far away it is from the mean. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the mean, which we already have, which is 50.1. And then we're going to take each data set value and see how far it is from the mean. So for example, we're going to say 185, subtract it from 50.1, and then we'll do it for 67 and 43 and so on. So it will look basically like this. So the first one, the second one, the third, and so on. Each one, we're going to take the distance from the mean. Now, even if you have a negative, the negative just means you are left of the mean, and positive means you are right of the mean. So you can see that, as we stated before, the mean is 50.1, and there are only two salaries actually above 50.1. So it makes sense that all the other ones are to the left of the mean. Thus, that's why it looks like it's negative. All right, so after we take the distance from the mean, what we then do is we're going to square each value. So each value that we took the distance from is going to be squared. So that's what it is here on the right. And then we're going to sum up all the values. And then you're going to divide everything by your sample size n, which was 12. So 12 minus 1, 11. You're going to take this whole sum and divide by 11 to get 1902.08. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the square root of that, which is 43.61. So your standard deviation is 43.61. So what does it mean? It is the typical distance from the mean. So the salaries in the data set are typically 43,610 away from the mean. Now here's the formula, as you can see. So we use for standard deviation the symbol S with the little subscript X. It equals to the square root, and inside we have our summation, which is sigma. We have xi, so xi just represents all your data values. So you would say the first one would be x1, and the second one would be x2, and the third one would be x3, and so on. So we would have a total of 12, and then each one would be subtracted from our mean, which was 50.1, and then we would square it and then add it all up and then divide it by 11 and then take the square root. So that's exactly what we did in the previous slides. All right, how do we find the IQR? I've already discussed this when I went over how to create the box plot using our 5-number summary. So the first thing you want to do is identify your median, which we already have. Now notice the median is split right in the middle, and everything above 34.5, that's 50% of your data is above from there, and 50% of your data is below from there. From there, we are going to find the middle of the 50%, and that is our Q1, or our quartile one, in this case, 34. And then we're going to find the middle of our upper quartile, which is our top 50%, and that is 41. So our Q1 is 34 and our Q3 is 41. Now the IQR is the interquartile range, or the middle range, which is simply just subtracting Q3 minus Q1. So it is your middle range. And in this case, it is 41 minus 34. And again, just like we stated for the range, you always want to give a number. You don't want to give two numbers subtracted. You want to say what the IQR is. So in this case, in context, you would say it's $7,000. So you don't want to say the IQR is between 41 or 34 and 41 or 41 minus 34. You want to actually state $7,000. All right, so here we have the three measures of spread. We have the range, which is the simplest one to calculate. It is the maximum value minus the minimum value. Then you have the standard deviation, which we showed how to find that. And then we have our middle range, which is $7,000. So which one do you think would be a better measure of spread in this case? If you want to pause the video here and think about it. All right, so if you said the IQR, then you are correct. Now, why is that? Well, if you recall, the standard deviation is used to find the typical distance from the mean. Now, our mean is already skewed because our highest salary is $185,000. So the mean is much higher than the median. So it is not a good representation of the salaries. We always want to use the median for salaries. Now, since standard deviation is based on finding how far it is away from the mean, then the standard deviation is also not a good representation.